Hey, what is up? My name is Nala. Today I'm going to be doing my March wrap up. In the month of March, I read a total of 8 books. 3 were DNFs. So let me just start with the DNFs first to just get them right out of the way. A Nature of Witches by Rachel Griffin. Now, let me just preface this by first saying that the term witches in this, it has nothing to do with occultism or any form of witchcraft, nothing like that, because I personally don't read things like that. They're strictly called witches because they have magical ability. I was so disappointed in this because the premise sounded so unique. The theme of this is surrounding climate change, and the people that have these magical elemental powers, it's based on the season that they're born in. You know, our main character is considered an ever witch, they're really rare. She's like the first one to be born in like 100+ years. So we have a chosen one, the chosen one trope, you know, and like they're all coming together to try and stop like the natural disasters that are happening because people are harming the earth, and they're trying to preserve the earth using their own particular season ability. It was also magical realism, which was strike number 1 for me because I couldn't jive with the elemental powers that they have and hearing them talk about being in Pennsylvania. It didn't work. That didn't work for me. But the main reason why I DNF'd this was because of the writing. The writing was super monotonous to me. It didn't fulfill me, so I tossed it. Next, Moonchosen by PC Cast. This was such a disappointment because it was like a huge buzzword for me when I heard about this. I heard animal companions and I was like, yeah, what? All the books in this series apparently is centered around animal companions, and every book in this series is like a different animal companion, and it has to do with tribes and clans and nature. The writing was juvenile. It had no depth, I had no understand. Like, I did not get far into this when I realized I was like, this, not for me. Tossed. Next. All right, the final DNF was Sometimes I Lie by Alice Feeney. It just didn't grip me. I didn't get far into this and I was just like, I'm bored. The characters didn't interest me. The storyline didn't interest me. It was just, well, actually the first book of the month that I read was Vida Nostra by Marina and Sergei Dyachenko. Y'all, this was a 5-star read for me. Fantastic, and let me tell you why. Y'all, this book was a trip and a half. It was such a wild ride. First off, this is a dark academia with like a smash of sci-fi and, you know, just like a little sprinkle of fantasy on top. We are following our main character, Sasha. Her and her mom are going on a week-long beach holiday. It doesn't take her long to realize that she is being watched and followed by this dark, shadowy man. He ends up approaching her and he gives her a series of tasks that she has to complete in the exact way he says to complete them. And if she fails to complete the task, or if she refuses to do it, then something bad will happen to her or someone in her life. Now, these tasks are meaningless. They make no sense. They end up going back home. He follows her back home. He approaches her again and gives her another series of tasks to complete that she is forced to do, or else there are consequences. And every time she completes a task, she throws up gold coins. So there's that. Now, unbeknownst to her, this whole process is obviously for a purpose. It is basically an initiation to get into this Institute of Special Technologies that she is forced to go to. All of the students at this university are forced to be there. We do not know what these special technologies are. It's in a small town that like no one's ever heard of, and all the people that live in this small town think that all of the kids at this university are drug addicts because it's pretty obvious that some weird things are happening and taking place at this school. And the writing is so brilliant in this because literally everything and nothing is simultaneously being said at the same time for nearly the entire thing. The first half of this book is a completely different ride than the second half of this book. The first half is more fantasy-esque and the second half is 100% sci-fi. And the writing changes because our character changes. For like the first half into the second half, she is changing, and so the writing is changing along with her. Like all the characters are really fleshed out in this. Even the side characters, you feel like you know them. You're in Sasha's point of view the entire time, but yet you feel like you know all the other characters as well. I mean, this was an intense read, okay? This is a psychological bender. How do I explain how this made me feel? My mind was being stretched and spread over and over and over again, but in a really good way. There's a huge mystery element to this book. Like, you feel like you are a student along with her going through this intense, rigorous training that she and everyone else is forced to go through or else. And it's intense. It's a wild ride. If you're an empath, if you're into psychology, if you're a deep thinker, this is for you. This is for you. This is not what I call brain popcorn. Which is a light-hearted read, easy, mindless. That is not this. This is intense. This is going to take up all of your mental space. Like some of us booktubers and book lovers love to be in multiple stories at one time. I don't recommend doing that when you're into this. Like, this is going to require all of your energy, all of your attention. I bookmarked and annotated so much in this book that I was writing everything down like a stream of consciousness. Just by the end of writing it all out, I had a psychological breakthrough and I was like, I think I passed. And then I was like, that was clever. I see what they did there. I see what they did. Good on ya. 5 stars. Next up, I read Daisy Darker. I loved this book. We are talking murder mystery, atmospheric, thrilling, suspenseful, just exciting. I have not been this excited. This book was so exciting for me to read. I buddy read this with my best friend, and her and I, just the excitement factor we had when reading this was just so palpable. It is just amazing. So we are following our main character, Daisy. We're in her point of view. Her Nana is turning 80. She thinks she's going to die at the age of 80. So she is summoning her family to come and spend her birthday, her 80th birthday with her. Where does Nana live? Picture a Victorian stone house on a cliffside by the sea in an estate called Sea Glass. That is what her estate is called, Sea Glass. Sea Glass is set on a tidal island. What does that mean? Let me explain. Everything is based around high tide, meaning there is like one main road that goes from Nana's house to the mainland, and during high tide that road is completely covered. You're trapped. The only way that you're getting to and from is by freaking boat. Okay, you're gonna canoe your way or boat your way there. That's the only way to get to and from Sea Glass, to the mainland to Sea Glass. And it's a murder mystery, so all the family is gathered together, trapped in the house because of high tide, and everyone starts getting picked off one by one. This is a mashup of Clue and Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. 100%. And I loved Clue. Clue is one of my favorite movies. It's so good, and I loved playing Clue when I was a kid. And Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None is one of the best. The plot twists in this, there were several plot twists, and one of them in particular made my jaw drop. I was listening to it because all the books I read this month were audiobooks. I don't know if I said that, but all of them were audio. I was listening to the audio, and literally I was like, what? And 5 stars, 5 stars. There was just one thing I did not like about this. I just didn't like one thing at the end. Because of the excitement factor of this still deserves 5 stars. 100%. Yes. Rock, Paper, Scissors, again, by the Alice Feeney. So after I read Daisy Darker, I heard about Rock, Paper, Scissors being very similar to the excitement and atmosphere factor that Daisy Darker had, and I was like, let's give this one a go. Let's give Alice Feeney another try, especially if it's in the same vein as Daisy Darker. And let me tell you, this was another 5 star. Loved it. Loved it, loved it. We are following a married couple. Their marriage is on the rocks. They win a weekend getaway to a old renovated chapel in the middle of the Scottish Highlands. Now, everything is immediately wrong. Everything immediately is suspect in this because they're driving there in the middle of a blizzard, so immediately they're going to be trapped in this place, and neither of them planned properly. Like what you would do if you were going on a trip was not done by either of them. There's literally nothing in the town that they drive through. The only thing, there's like one person in a shack, like right down the way, and that's it. Yeah, immediately everything starts going wrong, and you can feel the atmosphere of this place. You can feel the cold of the snow, the creepiness of this old chapel, the alone trapped factor going into it. Also, our main guy, the husband, has something called face blindness. Now, I do not remember the medical term for this, but this was an interesting representation of something that I had never heard of before, that I didn't know was a thing, but apparently this is a thing. It's like a neurological glitch in the brain where I think, from what I remember, faces are blurry. He could not recognize anyone, not even his own self in the mirror. He cannot recognize anyone. Just like, he cannot see facial features. It was just so good. It was so good. 5 stars. This also leaves, by the way, at the end, little like open interpretation. Several things that are like open to your own interpretation. And usually I don't like that. I kind of like when things are touched on and summed up, clarified. I still enjoyed that. I thought it was done really well. And after these two 5-star Alice Feeney suspense thrilling, exciting reads in a row. I was like, I salute you, Miss Feeney, and your plot twisted mind, because these two were top notch. Highly recommend. Next, I read another Alice Feeney. I Know Who You Are. This was a 1-star. After reading 3 5-star books in a row, everything started to kind of go downhill from there. I mean, it's hard to start off with a bang and just keep that momentum. All I'm gonna say was I learned a couple lessons. This really shows that how much a person can change and grow and progress for the better, because I would have never have known that this was written by the same person that had written those 2 other 5-star books. Solid pass, 1 star. That's it. Next one, another 1 star. Another 1 star was Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan McGuire. Again, this one was, the premise sounded good. Now, people kept, when I heard other people talk about this book, people kept saying it was dark. And they didn't really explain what they meant by dark, other than it touched on dark themes. When I read this, I would consider this a horror. I am not a horror reader, and I think that the people who liked this book read horror. That's how I would describe this, because it ends up being a murder mystery in this book as well, and there are some grotesque, disgusting things that happen in this that is horror. It's a horror genre. This represents a lot of mental illness, and things that happen in this book are made to be okay when they're not okay. And the whole premise of this series in particular sounds really good, which is why I wanted to try it, because it's based on kids who go into these fantasy worlds. It's like portal fantasy. Think Narnia and Alice in Wonderland, and you know, you go into these portal fantasy worlds, they get sent back from these worlds and they're stuck here in reality and they can't cope, and they get sent to a school called the Wayward Children's School or something like that. And the owner was my favorite character, and she said a lot, there was a lot of whimsical lines, and you know, but that's the only reason I gave it 1 star, was because the actual theme of it is a good theme. And you know, there was a couple whimsical lines from the best character, the owner of the school, but the actual story itself and how the horror, grotesque darkness of it, and it wasn't for me. It wasn't for me. Solid pass. All right, so after that, I had The Last Tale of the Flowered Bride by Roshani Chachki. I love saying her name like that. I don't know why I do. I just always say her name like that. Roshani Chachki. This was a 3-star read, and it is a love-hate relationship with this book. This book is mismarketed. Let me just read the premise. Once upon a time, a man who believed in fairy tales married a beautiful, mysterious woman named Indigo. He was a scholar of myths. She was an heiress to a fortune. They exchanged gifts and stories and believed they would live happily ever after. And in exchange for her love, Indigo extracted a promise that her bridegroom would never pry into her past. But when Indigo learns that her estranged aunt is dying and the couple is forced to return to her childhood home, the House of Dreams, the bridegroom will soon find himself unable to resist, for within the crumbling manor's extravagant rooms and musty halls, there lurks the shadow of another girl, Azure, Indigo's dearest childhood friend who suddenly disappeared. As the house slowly reveals his wife's secrets, the bridegroom will be forced to choose between reality and fantasy, even if doing so threatens to destroy their marriage or their lives. So now listening to that premise, that screams, okay, we have a haunting, gothic atmosphere, dark fantasy, romance, mystery elements, fairy tale-esque surrounding this marriage. That is, the secrets are slowly unraveling the marriage. So that is not 100% accurate. This isn't a fantasy, you guys. Writing was very lush and poetic and very fairy tale, beautiful, flowery type writing. It gives the illusion of fantasy, but in reality, this is a story about trauma written in a fairy tale, fantastical, beautiful way. We are in 2 points of views, and we're starting off in the book with the bridegroom's POV. Now, how this book starts off, I loved it. And before I even get into that, because I have things to say about that, it was mysterious and seductive, and it had that, like, I was thinking it was a fantasy when I got into this, and I was like guessing if she was like, if Indigo was like some hybrid creature, because Greek myths are mentioned in this. There's like dark grim fairy tales that are mentioned in this. Like, there's so many fantastical elements mentioned in this, and coming from the bridegroom's point of view, I actually loved his point of view, and the premise makes it sound like we're gonna be in his point of view the entire time. Seeing how the marriage unravels when they go back to her childhood home and he's starting to uncover the secrets, that's not what ends up happening. And I was so like, I had to like do a mental shift. I was like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was gonna be. I gotta like shift gears here, because we end up in someone else's point of view, and we're basically living in the past of like childhood memories the majority of the time. We're not even focused on the marriage unraveling secret, his point of view situation. It just completely shifted. So the content warnings in this are abuse, manipulation, toxic relationships, and particularly sexual harassment and abuse of a minor. It's not marketed that way. You have no idea about that going into it. That could be a problem for some people. I felt like as a reader, I was tricked. And I did a buddy read of this with my best friend as well, and she hated it. And that's the hate part. Like, that's what I hated about this, was the trickery and being mismarketed. Because as a reader, it's like I thought I was getting one thing, and my mind and my mood was, I was in the mood for this, and then it turned out to be completely different. I gave it 3 stars because I love the writing. I love that beautiful, poetic, flowery writing and like the dark, gothic atmosphere of it. 3 stars. Next was another 1-star read. The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley. I forgot to mention that for me personally, March is mystery month. I try to read as many mysteries as I can get my hands on because I love reading mysteries in March. So I tried my hand at another mystery, and this had so much potential. So much potential. We have a group of former college friends who haven't seen each other in a decade, and they had a tradition when they were in college that every New Year's Eve they would go somewhere and spend New Year's Eve together. So someone decides to, you know, hey, let's all get together again. They plan a trip to a hunting lodge in the middle of the Scottish Highlands. Little bit of a theme here. A historic blizzard rolls in and traps them there. It's another locked door mystery of who done it. No one can get it. First off, these people were so obnoxious, snooty, entitled, and pretentious. It was just ridiculous. I should have DNF'd this. And again, another lesson. It was just another lesson for me that if I have that feeling that this is not going to be good based on what I'm getting in like the first few chapters, to just DNF it. I really thought I wanted to see if there was going to be a super interesting, intriguing plot twist. So I suffered through it and it wasn't. It was not executed well at all. The history that was brought up in the beginning of the story with like prohibition and whiskey and all that, never brought up again. Don't do, like, you can't give that type of gem. It's like implying that you're going to include it, and it's never brought up again. What? And also, there is no mystery to this. You don't even know who the victim is until near the end of the actual book. There's no clues to follow. There's no suspense or excitement. Really, you are enduring these obnoxious, pretentious people. No. Solid pass. All right. The last book of the month. I needed something to, because at this point I was slumpy. It was like, I am in a slumpity slump. I need something to pull me out of the slump. The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. I gave this 4 stars. In this, we are following a 14-year-old boy. His name is Ponyboy Curtis. In the society that he's growing up in, you are basically 2 groups of people. You're either a greaser or a soc. A soc is short for social. A greaser is basically considered an outsider, which he is. A soc is considered really a rich kid who starts trouble, and because their parents have money, they can buy their way out of anything that they start. Really. Greasers are usually, they come from dysfunctional families. Their parents aren't present. They end up in jail. They're in gangs. A Ponyboy, he lives with his 2 brothers, and their parents died, I believe, in a car accident. Now, his older brother, Darius, has this huge responsibility thrust upon him now that their parents have died. He's 20, I believe, and the middle brother, Soda Pop, I will get back to him in a minute. He is older as well, but he dropped out of school and he works at a gas station working on cars. So you're following really this family of brothers. They have their own gang or crew, and the youngest of the crew, his name is Johnny. The premise of the story is that Johnny ends up killing a soc because this one soc was gonna kill Ponyboy. So Johnny ends up saving Ponyboy's life. And that is like the event that this whole story focuses around. We have names like Ponyboy, Soda Pop, and 2-Bit. And then you have another guy on the crew whose name is Steve. I'm like, whatever, Steve. Bring me back to Soda Pop. I am team Soda Pop 100%. Soda Pop was my favorite character. He shows brotherly love and affection. Zero ego. I watched the movie after I listened to the audiobook because the audiobook was only 5 hours. It was super short, and I watched the movie after listening to it. And even in the movie, he snaps, and even when he snaps, he doesn't get angry. He's like emotional when he snaps, and I'm just like, Soda Pop is just amazing. This is a YA classic. It is written in such a simple way, and it's meant to be simple. It's still covering these really dark, hard-hitting topics and themes. You still feel the emotion. Y'all, I cried. it got me. 4 stars for sure. That is everything I've read in the month of March. Let me know in the comments down below, have you read any of these? I would love to know your thoughts. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button so you are notified every single time that I post a video. And as always, happy reading, and I will see you in the next video.